So, Amdeep Benji, over to you.
Angie, no, carry on. Thank you.
Hanji, we missed you seeing your face in the last session, so I thought we'll make the most of it today. Um, Hanji, so with Guru Sahib's Kirpa, we have speedily somehow got to almost the final session of the course, which is happening on Sunday. And so with Guru Sahib's Kirpa, we've been coming together for 6 weeks as a Sangat. And within this time, you know, we're very grateful for the the way that Sangat have showed up, you know, session after session, week after week. It's not easy, to make this time commitment. And yet, Sangat has shown up, and, been really engaged in the chat and reflections and questions. And, it's felt that even though, we haven't had as much one-to-one interaction within this course, it's really felt like energetically people are connecting and shifting in a significant way, and have done in this course. So that's amazing, Guru Sahib's Kirpa. And, we ourselves have thoroughly enjoyed coming together with you, and it's helped us as well massively. So, with Guru Sahib's Kirpa, today's session is question and answer. And we have got Susan Benji has kindly compiled a list of questions that have come up during the week. And we're going to, I think, just go through those. Hannah, Benji, should we start with that?
Angie,
So,
Angie,
Benji, have you got the questions?
Angie, yeah,
Okay, brilliant. Because
somehow.
I'm on my phone, so I'm gonna rely on Amdeep Benji for the questions and the answers as well. um, so we've got a list of those of questions, and I think we'll go through those one by one.
Angie. So, Guruji, so the first question is about dreams. Do we need to make meaning of our dreams? With Guruji's grace, chanting Guru Mantra for the last several days before going to bed, and was independently short on sleep. Last night kept on waking up to anxious dreams. So does that mean anything, that if you're waking up or if you're having anxious dreams or any kind of dreams?
Andy. Okay, so you know how we spoke about the last time that sometimes when we are connecting with the Simran and um, kind of rejigging our nervous system, we are trying to step into a new personality, new thought, emotion cycles. And what we know from neuroscience and psychology, as well as Gurbani, is that the you know all of the kind of old ways, the emotions that the body has been used to experiencing, those try to come up to the surface again, to try and bring us back to that old way of being, um, or in a way they're also becoming released. So as we said, sometimes when we sit to do the Simran, the thoughts come, flooding up, or the emotion, or we well up, and all of that is emotion trying to, I think, release from the system, some survival stress that's been built up. And from a Gurbani perspective, again, it's those sponge, trying to just up the ante a little bit to try and bring you back to old personality. And so it can be unsettling. It can feel overwhelming at times. But that's why, again, we've said, coming into the Sangat again, connecting with the Simran again and again, can help us to move past those hurdles, past those points, which can be very significant points actually in our transformation, that if we are able to push past that and continue the Simran, we often have what is called by Joe Dispenza as a biological upgrade, where we transform physically in terms of the cells, DNA even in our body, emotionally, psychologically. And if we can push past that that little turbulence that comes up or that emotion that rises up, push past by what by meaning coming back to the presence, coming back to the Simran again, then we are setting in place a new kind of personality. There, we're laying down new pathways within our brains. So it's very exciting times. Um, in terms of the meaning of dreams, Benji, do you want to speak about that?
Angie, so there's two kind of parts that I've understood. One is usually the more Simran that we're doing, the less thoughts that we're having, the less dreams we will have. So generally what we take in through our five senses, through our nine doors of the body during the day is what we will process in our dreams. And personal experience has been is the more Simran that we're doing, the less dreams we have, to the point you will generally not have any dreams at all because you will just go into that state of sun. So every night when we go to sleep, the man leaves the body and it returns back to Paramatma. And if we are awake in the sense that we are conscious, we will experience that we've gone into sun, we've gone into Vaiguruji's realm. But if our surti falls, if our consciousness falls, we are still within that realm, but we then fall into dreams. We fall into the processing of vichars. So another thing one of the Gurmukhs has said to us personally is that sometimes what you think is a dream is also not a dream. It can be other lifetimes that we've had that are possibly that are also playing out at the same time. Um, so I am going to be really honest. I'm not clear on the difference between what is a dream and what is another lifetime. One of the indications is that, a dream will become fuzzy and then you'll start to forget it. Whereas if you're having an experience that is more than that, it will still feel very real. You'll still remember it very clearly. However, the caveat to that is it's not really important to put emphasis on what you saw when you were asleep. The idea is to go beyond that, to go into that realm of Paramatma, into that realm of Vaiguru, and go beyond those vichar. Even if it is another lifetime, what are we going to do with that information, Hannah? We could have been anybody. We could have been, Ajad Dikala Guru Sikh. We could have been a Shahid Singh or Singhani. But how is that relevant now? Because obviously we didn't make it last time. So this time we want to get to that point where we're having darshan of Vaheguru while we're alive. And that's the important thing. So I wouldn't put too much importance on trying to analyze your dreams, trying to work them out. The importance is on where is your dhyan, where is your attention during the day, where is your attention as you're falling asleep. And we want to be able to get to a state where we're in that presence, we're in Vaheguruji's Hazuri as much as possible. Hanji. So the second question kind of, you were talking about emotions, it kind of follows on from that. So there's kind of three questions here. Do emotions play a part in terms of hearing the sound within, so the shabad? If in Bairag, is it easier for the sound to be heard? And what does it mean if I start crying during Simran without being sad?
So, so when we start to tear up, well up, whilst we're doing Simran, um, what we know scientifically is that the stress hormone cortisol is actually released through our tears. So it's the body's stress release mechanism, actually. And many times we have um, kind of accumulated a lot of stress or mal inside of us or over the mind. And so when we start doing the Simran, the Bhakti, um, we start to release that, and we will start to well up, the tears will flow, and the mind is becoming more nirmal as the tears flow. Um, and so, yeah, it's a really good time to turn the attention inwards and sit in dhyan at that point, um, to utilize that emotion to to strengthen our ability to sit in dhyan. Because when we're really yearning, when we're in that state of berag and we we're reflecting on how there's been a lot of suffering in this life and beyond, and we want to get beyond that. We want to connect to Paramatma, and the tears come. That's a really good opportunity to try and make use of that dhyan, that emotion, because we're often, if in that state of berag, we often don't have other vichar. We're very in that ikman ikjit kind of mode. When we're suffering a lot or we're in berag, it's often ikman ikjit, and that's a really good opportunity to connect, deepen our connection with Paramatma. So at that point, you can just put your dhyan inside, and we've talked about the different places that we can focus. Just pick a point. The Nabi is one that is a good starting point, or just in front of the face, and just hold that emotion whilst sitting in dhyan. And that, in my experience, has really helped to solidify and deepen the spiritual connection at that time. Angie, what was the other bit?
Hanji. Hanji, I think you've kind of answered it. So, Hanji, so Benji's saying that, that Berag, what is Berag? Berag is that sense of separation, of remembering, of Vichora, of remembering that separation that we've had from Paramatma. So sometimes we might spontaneously start crying when we're reading Gurbani or we're doing Simran because we have this sense of we've been separated for so long. So that's a positive emotion in the sense that we're realizing that we've been separated from Vaheguru, and use that emotion and that desire, that thirst to meet Vaheguru into that Simran or into that Dhyan, into focusing on Vaheguru. And if that is the case where Benji saying Ikaman Ikachit, meaning single-mindedness, if we're in that state of single-mindedness, single-focused, then yes, the Shabad will be louder then, because the only thing that stops us hearing that Shabad, which is within all things, but the only thing that prevents us from hearing it is because our mind has become scattered. Our mind is stuck in the past, in the future, in desire, in judgment, in all of these different things. But when our mind becomes singly focused and we start to clear that mail through the Simran, then we are bound to hear that Shabad louder within us. Hanji. So to progress on this path, what helps more? Longer meditation sessions or small 5 to 10 minutes whenever we can add up. So is it better to do longer Simran, or is it better to do 5 or 10 minutes and add them up?
Angie, Ben, did you want to answer that?
Hanji, so I think both are useful. Um, if you're a beginner, then the 5 to 10 minutes is even precious, and that's a good place to start. If you're asking, how do we really make progress on this path? How do we start to cleanse that mind? How do we change and transform who we've been, who we are? How do we start to walk that Santaka Marg, that path of the saint, and have that experience of Vaheguru? Then obviously the more effort that we put into this, the better, and it's quality over quantity. But if we can get quality and quantity, then otto vivadya. So we can be chanting for 3 hours, but if our mind hasn't focused on the sound of the Shabad, then it hasn't become still, it hasn't become single focused, that quantity is not going to matter. If you can do 5 to 10 minutes, but really focus, Benji, I always remember Darshan Benji said she started with like a 1 minute timer on her phone and she would really go for it. And um, that can be more beneficial than doing an hour and not really paying attention. But if you're asking, and that's at the beginning, but if you're asking, how do I really make progress? How do I start to hear that Shabad? How do I change who I've been, these thoughts, these belief systems? Then I've heard a Gurmukh recommend, if you can do 3 hours a day and you did that for a month, you will definitely experience a lot of progress. So obviously, the more you can do, the better as quality. But if that feels overwhelming and you're new to this, then that's not the recommendation. The recommendation is start small and then build up. It's about the level of dhyan, the level of focus that you can build to begin with. And then comes in how long you can do it. Do you want to add to that, Benji?
I think the more that you can do it with elevated souls as well, I
Mm.
know that wasn't exactly the question, but that's been a game changer for me personally. So if you're doing Simran with Sangat and, with, Abhyasi Sangat, then, you know, it's gonna have a big impact. It helps with connection a lot, Angie.
Ji, ji. So for the last few days while doing Simran, I've been feeling something on my heart, like unwinding occasionally. It's a nice feeling. It's different from heartbeat. I also feel occasional beat in my belly button. What could it be? Angie. So,
Uh,
Angie,
hmm,
go for it. Go for it,
yes,
Angie.
good.
This is
Okay. So while we're doing this practice and um, we're kind of consistent with it, we'll start to notice lots of sensations in the body. And you might experience like a release in certain parts of your body, or you might experience um I don't know, all kinds of things. There's shaking, there's, pulsating, there's all kinds of things. You might find your feet change the temperature. So there's all kinds of changes that happen within the body as the nervous system starts to regulate, as stress starts to release. And so it's important to keep the mind connected to the Simran. And it's absolutely fine. Obviously, we acknowledge how the Simran makes us feel, and often it does make us feel really good. Like I remember, um, I was doing Simran for some time and didn't notice really anything different in my body, and then, I got a bit more consistent with it, and then suddenly I started to notice a lightness within my body. Like literally, I used to feel like I was as light as a feather, and it used to feel so good. And I used to just like wait for that feeling, and I'd feel it, and I'd feel brilliant. And it's nice to appreciate, the way that Simran makes us feel. So that's really good. And then we want to direct our attention back because we want to go deeper. So we want to bring our attention back to the Simran or back to that state of Dhyan so that we can go even deeper and experience even more Sej. And in terms of if you're noticing the heart beating at different in different parts of your body, so that means your mind is really going into surge. If you can hear the heartbeat, and that's a really good time to do Rom Rom Simran. And what you can do is when you're experiencing that pulsating, then you can do Vaheguru Simran alongside it. And a really good technique is that as the heart beats, you chant Vaheguru, 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 Vaheguru. So you're not focusing on your breathing at this point or anything like that. Inhale, exhale. Just internally, you're just chanting Vaheguru, Vaheguru with each breath. I'm sorry, with each pulsation, with each heart, with each heartbeat, and yeah, that's a really, really good thing to do. And the Gurmukhs say that you know if we do that, if are able to do Ram Simran, then when we start hearing the Shabad, sometimes it can be quite loud. And if we're doing the Ram Simran, then the Shabad will sama into our body, kind of. It won't feel so kind of like strong and loud and difficult to experience to hear. It will feel more it will feel kind of more palatable, it will feel nicer, we won't be afraid of it. So, Hanji, anything you want to add, Benji?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is, sometimes in other traditions, we focus on the chakra system, the chakras.
Mm.
So sometimes those different sensations, like Benji was just saying, is you releasing energy from there. People say, my heart center is opening, and different traditions might say focus on those chakras. And Gurbani does refer to those chakras, but they don't advise us to focus on them because as we're doing the Simran, all of that clearing starts to happen automatically. So I just wanted to say that as well. If we
Mm.
start to focus on the heart, that's fine. You might feel that sense of love, but our purpose is not to just focus on the heart. Our purpose is to go beyond the body, the physical body, and to go into that Jotapad. And so all of that stuff about the chakras opening, it's all fine, but actually all of that actually happens automatically as we're doing the Simran because it's the full system, if you like, gets an upgrade, as opposed to just focusing on one part. So Another question, is there a difference between Sej Dhun and Panch Shabad and Anhad Shabad?
I'm going to let you answer that,
I
Benji.
was going to ask you to answer that, Benjo.
So again, limited understanding here, and if anybody can share deeper, that's better. And so my understanding is that there are different sounds that we experience. Panch Shabad, the five Shabads, and in Gurbani it's Panch Shabad Nirmail Bajje, Javar Sank Tol Karnagaje. Right, so you've got Javar, you've got Tol, you've got Sank, you've got different sounds, and those are the five Shabads. And but there's Kanere Shabads, like Vajje Shabad Kanere, and the Shabads that we hear do depend on actually which chakkar the energy is flowing through kind of uh, so if energy is moving up and you know depending on the chakkar you will hear a different shabad that the energy is at kind of thing so she kar she gur she updes so there's she chakkar and with each chakkar there's a different updesh there's a different um kind of frequency vibration of Shabbat. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. And so yeah, and then the purpose is to go to the Ek Shabbat. Ek Shabad mere pran pasat hai bahar janam na ava. That one Shabbat, that Sahajatun, which is one Shabbat. So it's all of those Shabbats, but brought together in that one sound. And that's, from my understanding, is the Sahajatun, which we need to listen to.
And brilliant. So to progress, where shall we spend most time? Loud, Simran, Antargat, or in Dhyan? We want to make progress.
All of them.
And
So
and
yeah, starting with the loud, you know, so I went through this phase when initially when I was doing Simran, where I'd put a timer on when I was not initially, after I'd started to experience some peace, then I really had this jar to go deeper. So I would set a timer on. It started off with 1 hour, then 2 hours, and I would take myself away into my outbuilding in the back, and kids and husband in the house, and I would just do really loud Simran for a whole until my alarm went off, and like really loud, and it just takes over as well. So as the pavan starts to balance, you start to just go louder and be able to go loud and fast and be completely in sync. The breathing is completely in sync. And then what would happen is somewhere along that hour or 2 hours, I would go into sun. Somehow from doing really loud Simran, I would just suddenly be in sun. I wouldn't be chanting, I would be asleep basically. And so then it became, and then when I got up from that sleep, I would feel like so rejuvenated. I would feel like in so much sedge. And so that used to be my daily practice for, about 6 months daily, 2 hours, 1 hour, 2 hours, just going really loud. And then take the mind would then go into sun. So I found that a really useful thing to do. Um, so yeah, and then subsequently, as the mind started going into sun less in a way, started being more awake in that state, I would then started to go quieter. And now I do loud simran for a short amount of time, and the mind starts to settle sooner. Then I go quieter, and then I sit in dhyan for longer. So the proportions change now. Before it used to be longer simran for 80% of the loud simran for 80%, then dhyan for a very short amount of time. Now it's the other way around. So it depends on how clear your mind is.
Angie, Angie. And also, it's really difficult to sit in dhyan unless you can start to hear the Anhad Shabad. So, as Benji is saying, the longer we're doing it out loud, focusing the mind, it's also difficult to sit and do Antargat, to do it internally unless the mind is settled. So that first stage is really important. And then once the mind starts to settle, then it's easier and easier to sit in those stages. And again, same as Benji, we've had those experiences, particularly when we've been to Simran camp in India, where we're doing it all as a sangat, we're doing it super loud, and then the next minute you're just not there anymore. And it's an amazing experience. So if you want to try that, please do put the plug in. Please do come to the camps in the UK. But even better, if at some point, if you have that jar to come to Punjab or Canada, there's a camp in August as well, where you're doing longer amounts of Simran. You're doing 3 hour blocks. You're doing it in Sangat. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. And you can just focus on that. And then when you come back into your life, what you'll find is your avastha has changed, your stage has changed, and then it's easier to be in your life, doing all of your garam and still feel more connected. So, how do people wake up for Nitnem after going to bed late and then manage to not feel tired all day? So, I'm not sure about Nitnem. But for me, this is, I go to bed super early because my priority is Amrit Vela. But what I find is even if we wake up really early to do that Amrit Vela Simran, or that Nitnem, if you go into sun, you will not feel as tired the whole day. Whereas the days where I used to stay in bed and have a lie-in, I would feel more tired and have a lot more vichar, a lot more thoughts than if I get up early and do it. If I get up early and do it, I can keep going most of the day. And I'm somebody who has very limited energy levels most of the time. But the other thing is, what you'll notice is, and this is not your question, but it's related, is the more that's going on in your life, the more thoughts that you're having, the more tired you will feel. So if you're constantly finding yourself in a state of stress where you're in the past, in the future, judging, criticizing, the more tired you will feel. Whereas you can be in a situation, the same situation, but you're not really taking on so many thoughts. You're doing more Simran, staying present, and you can do the same amount of things but not feel tired. So the recommendation from my perspective is if you can and you have an option, don't go to bed late. um, but the more you're doing the Simran, the more you're going into Sun, that will give you that energy. Uh, Hanji, Benji, did you want to add to that? I think I missed a question. I'll go back to that one, Hanji.
So I went through this phase, right, where so I have four children, but at that this phase that I'm talking about, I only had two, and they were kind of 3 and 5 years old. And I went through this phase of um, after putting the kids to bed, I would do Simran till very late, usually till I would just sit from about 8 to 9 o'clock till about 1 a.m. and just do Simran. And then I would just kind of fall asleep doing Simran. And then I would wake up, 5, and we used to go to Guru Manyo Granth together, didn't we, for 2 hours as well. And so I was getting very little in terms of actual sleep, but I was on fire. Like, I had never been more productive. I felt so much said and anand and bliss all day long. And so what I learned from that is that actually when you're doing Simran, you and you're going into Sun, especially, not just Simran where you've got lots of vichar, then you will not need as much rest.
Brilliant, thank you. So two different experiences there, but the point is the same in that.
Thank
And
you.
you said, I missed a question, Mafi. I wanted to ask if I'm trying to wake up before 6 a.m. so that I can do my Mool month. So I'm trying to wake up before 6 a.m. so that I can do my Mool Mantar. Would this still count as Nitnem?
I think that from my uh, sense is whatever you can do is good, whatever you can do. And I would never feel that it's a good thing to put pressure on yourself to do more than you're able to do. So this isn't about putting pressure on yourself, or this is about just slowly said dinal, just trying to connect as much as you can. And if Mool Mantra is all that you feel you can do, then that's brilliant. Just keep doing it.
And it's not about how many bania we've
Quantity.
done.
Quantity.
It's about where is your man when you're doing that. So is your mind focused on the shabad, on ik or onkar? Are you focusing on the sound? So whether you use Mool Mantar, whether you use Vaiguru Simran, whether you're doing your Panch Baniya, it's about the avastha of the mind and about where is the dhyan of the mind. Is your mind focused on what you're doing? Are you fully present with it? Hanji. So number 9 says sun questions. After doing Simran or listening to Anhad Shabad, if we fall asleep, is that sun? How do we know we've gone into sun? There's a kind of similar question. So let's start with that.
Yeah, go, Benji. See.
Hanji. So for my understanding, the difference between sun and just falling asleep is that if you're still having vichar, if you're still in a lot of thoughts, then you've just fallen asleep. If you've got to the point where you're not having many thoughts anymore, and then you've gone into that state that feels like sleep, then that is sun. You will also notice that when you wake up, you'll feel very different. When you've been into sun, you'll feel like Benji was saying, you feel rejuvenated, you'll feel relaxed. For me personally, as someone who's historically had a lot of pain in my body, if I've got any aches and pains, those pains will be gone when I wake up from sun, which is not necessarily true from sleep. So yeah, in terms of what sun is like, that so there's different states of sun, but the sun that we normally go into when we're doing the Simran is it just feels like a void. It's just black space. There's no visions, there's no colors, there's no thoughts in our mind. It's just a complete state of vacuum of space, and what in English terms some people call the void. So I'll read Christian mystics or Sufism, and they'll talk about the void as well. But then there's other stages of sun where you might hear Shabad, and then you might see Burgash as well, where instead of it all being black, it will all be bright white. So that is how we know that we've gone into sun, is that we'll be in that space, no thoughts. You won't feel like you're in your body anymore. Um, you won't be connected to your body, but you'll just be in this space. It's one of those things again, gunge ki mithyai, where it's really difficult to explain in words, and it's an experience that you have to have for yourself. If you're in there and you're having thoughts, then generally, or you're having dreams, then generally that is not considered to be sun. Benji, do you want to add anything?
No.
Okay. Is the Anhad Shabad still heard? And if we don't hear it, are we still in sun or somewhere else? And if we fall asleep whilst doing Simran in Antargat, should we stay asleep or wake up? Do you want those separately?
I've
So
forgotten what.
is the Anhad Shabad still heard? If we don't, I think it's related to sun. So
Anji.
can you still hear the Anhad Shabad in sun? And if we don't hear it, are we in sun or are we somewhere else?
So you can hear the Shabad when you're not in Sun, and you can hear it in Sun. And we want to be aiming towards hearing it in Sun, because that's when we've kind of left our physical body and we're in that realm of Paramatma and we're listening to Shabad there. That's what we want to aim towards, because that's when our mind is awakened. Jado sada man jagya. That's how we want to listen to the Shabad. And if we do go to sleep doing Simran, yes, we should just go to sleep. We don't need to wake up, and we should aim to go to sleep doing Simran every night when we're going to sleep, because all of those swas then are spent in our home. So that's a lot of bhakti that you've done all night. So it's a really good fast track to spiritual development is going to sleep doing Simran.
And sometimes Gurmukh asks questions like when we're doing Simran in the morning, and we're going to Sun, but then I need to do my Nitnem or I need to get up and get ready. And one of the things I would say to that, Benji referenced Joe Dispenza earlier, and one of the things I was listening to that he said is he always gives himself plenty of time. So he'll, for example, give himself 2 hours to get to that state of going beyond those vichar. And I know that, again, that might sound extreme if you don't have that time, but if we're talking about we want to make the most amount of development, is give yourself enough time. Um, just like, we'll prioritize anything else. Give yourself enough time that if you're doing the Simran and you're going into Sun, that you're able to stay in there and then before you start doing the rest of your tasks. Because if we're worrying about, oh, well, I've only got 15 minutes to do this and then I need to do this or I need to get the kids ready, it's going to be really difficult to settle those vichar and we're not going to make as much progress. So the idea is, even if you're starting small, is to start to increase that amount of time you're giving yourself. Um, I know there's going to be people who feel like, well, what, I'll have to get up at 6 o'clock or I'll have to get up at 4 o'clock to do that. And it's what we put in is what we get out. I was comparing myself, I'm not judging anyone else here, but when we used to
Fair
have a
enough.
family wedding, Waiguchi, if everyone can mute. Um, when we used to have a family wedding, I would get up, we'd have like 2 hours sleep, we'd go to bed at 1, I'd get up at 3 for the makeup lady and the hair lady to come. And because that was my priority on that day. And in the same way, if we want have as much bias to have that connection with Maharaj as we do for the worldly things, then holy, we can start to build that time up as you start to experience that surge, that peace, that transformation. We're able to give ourselves more and more time. Hanji, Benji, do
Yeah.
you want to add?
Um, yeah. So this path is not one about putting pressure on yourself. It's not about putting demands and on you or, you know, you know, you're all here on this course because you want to connect, and there will be times when that feeling is stronger, and there will be times that that feeling is weaker, and you know you know we don't want to put any pressure on ourselves or guilt ourselves if we're not able to do a certain amount or not able to get up, because that's again all bunge trying to bring you back into disconnection. Guilt is also a lower vibration emotion. It's not going to help us on the path. So this is a sajda marg that you do as much as you feel that you want to. And it might seem like a lot when we're saying 2 hours, 3 hours, right?
Yeah.
And but the thing is that when you start to experience that state of surge, you will automatically have the desire to increase the time. It's not like a thing of um, only the most disciplined people are going to be able to progress here. This isn't about discipline. I have no discipline. I still to this day don't have any discipline. But I can do 2 hours, 3 hours of Simran, not from a place of discipline, but from a place of yearning to feel that state of surge, to get closer. So it becomes a thing where, you can't wait, till you've got, like how, so you can't wait till, the kids are in bed so you can watch Netflix, or you can't wait till, you've got some free time to yourself that you can, have a hot bath, with candles and all that. It's like
Mm.
that. That's how it feels. You just can't wait, like to um, just be able to go into that state and feel that and experience that. And then you see the impact it has on you, on your personality in the day. And, you just want to do it more and more. It's like a drug. You just become addicted to it. It's like chocolate, but without any side effects.
Hanji, Hanji, Hanji. And, from a Gurbani perspective, Maharaj is telling us this is our true purpose. Sometimes we say, I'm going to put my Sikhi in the morning for my Nitnem, or I'm going to put it in the evening for Rera Sahib, and then life is in between. But actually, my experience has been that actually Sikhi is life, and then everything else is on top of that, because our true purpose is to walk this path. And बहुत जन्म बिछड़े थे माधो ए जन्म तुम्हारे लेके. For how many lifetimes have we prioritized the world, the Maya, all of these other things, but we forgot Vaheguru in that. And so, as Benji's saying, naturally, the more Sangat, the more Gurbani, the more Simran we do, we start to have that yearning, that pulling. And it's not to say it's easy. None of us, I can speak for Benji to say it's not easy. We all go through periods where it just feels so hard. to get up, to do it. The vichar are so strong. And that's where that compassion comes in. Taula taram, daya ka put, taram, that spirituality is birthed from that compassion. And when you start to do it through that compassion for yourself and for your family because you're a better person, that's where that motivation, if you like, comes from. So a follow-on question, I guess, to that is, I still struggle to do the Simran on a daily basis. The Panchjot are so strong. So I guess they're asking for advice on how we can deal with that.
Just build inspiration, build motivation. There's two ways that we can change, through suffering or inspiration. So you've got to choose which one you want more of in your life. So if we don't change, then the suffering will inevitably push us more towards connection. Whereas, it'd be nice if we can do it through inspiration. So listening to, coming to courses, coming to the camps, honestly, those are going to be a game changer. We've got one in Walsall, we've got one in Bradford, Slough, got some diwans in Scotland. So, you know, immerse yourself in inspiration, YouTube clips, books, spiritual of spiritual seekers, from all faiths, and that will help to build that desire and motivation.
Angie. So it's duk or book. Either there's the
Thank you.
desire to do it or the duk takes you towards it. And once you've experienced it, you can't unknow it, you can't forget it. So even if we fall off the path for a week, a month, once we know what it feels like, that sedge feels like, we know that there's no other way, and we'll just keep coming back to it. But it helps to have that sangat as support to. So we've got the men's group on Saturday mornings. That's the way that the men can stay connected. Maraj Kirpana, we want to continue the Sunday morning slot as a women's group. If you're near Slough, we have the physical gatha. We've got YouTube and everything as well. And spend time with Gurbani as well. Sometimes we forget, and even if we're just focused on the Simran alone is not even enough, because that ego, that homme, the bunch can take over still, even if we're doing the Simran, and the Gurbani keeps us in check as well. So we need both. They both balance each other out. And when we're reading, even if it's just the Hukamnama of the day that's come from Darbar Sahib, and we really do Khoj of it, we really contemplate it, that also is constantly giving us that inspiration, giving us those reminders about what life is really about, where dukh comes from, where sukh truly comes from. So make that connection with your guru. You don't need a middle person to be translating all the time. Yes, it's good to learn from each other, but make your personal connection as well. So, Hanji, when talking about the dragon, what do we become if we are in one of those thoughts? Maybe that's referring to if we die, if we're in one of those thoughts. B is who gets to be human, and C is what can we do to make sure if we don't get to Milab, that at least we can get this chance to be human and start off where we left off.
So that's a very long topic to talk about, but in brief, wherever we spend our swas is that determines our next life. So Satogun is Akash Lok, which will be kind of birds, so slightly above the world, but still very much inside of it. And then you've got the Tamogun, which is Tamogun is Patal Lok, which is underneath the water animals, so fish, sea creatures. And then you've got Rajogun, which is land animals. So, hard workers, they're put to work, those animals. So if we're Rajoguni and we end on that note, then we have an opportunity to do more work, as land animals. And I don't know the answer to the other questions 100%. And the one thing I was talking with Harbising about last night was that he had learned from somewhere that, wherever we've left off, that's where we'll start up at the next life. So if we're kind of doing bhakti and we're connected but not quite experience milap, then we'll have all of that done, that spiritual wealth accumulated, and we will have access to all of that in the next life as well.
Mm.
Hanji.
Hanji, yeah, similar to what we heard from a Gurmukh, because, if we're doing the Simran, but we don't quite get there, you can end up in Devlok as well. You can become like I don't know what the English equivalent is, but,
Demigod.
Hanji. So obviously the answer is always Simran. So as much Simran as we're doing, all we can do is try, it's Maharaji's Kirpa as well. But as long as we're doing our best with it, our intention is there, then Maharaj Kirpa karoge, hai na?
Hanji.
So there was a question on private message. If we can't do loud Simran in a family setting, is there another way to go into Sun? And just quickly, I would say Hanji. So if you're doing it quietly, you're able to kill the vichar, and then go antargat, and then go into dhyan. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to do it loud,
Hmm.
but it's just one way that you can do it. But you can do it. It depends on your own avastha, the state of your mind. You can do it longer, quieter. It's just whatever you need to do in order to reduce your vichar. So um, when I didn't, there's been times where we don't go to the Gurdwara, where we've done it at home and we've done it quieter. Maybe we've done it for longer to kill those vichar, but by no means do you have to do it loud. We were just giving some examples. Sometimes it's easier if you can do it loud. Another time is you don't have to necessarily do it in the morning. You can do it if you happen to be home on an afternoon. You could do it then as well. But it doesn't have to be loud, but it just helps sometimes to awaken the mind. So I'm just conscious of the time, but we're getting through the questions. When we do Antargat Simran, what can we use to anchor our mind and stop the thoughts? So similar question, but Benji, go for it. When we do Antargat
Antar.
Simran,
Hanji.
what can we use to anchor our mind and stop the thoughts?
So we can use the breath. That would be the next anchor. So as the breath flows, naturally in line with how the breath is flowing, we can internally chant Vahe as on the in breath and Guru on the out breath. And then subsequently the Shabad would be the next anchor, the internal Shabad.
Anji. So if you're trying to go into Antargat but you find the mind isn't settling, okay, then maybe try it for a minute or two. And if it's not settling, then I would start reciting out loud again. And then as the mind settles, then come back. So it's kind of, you've got to play it by ear, if you know what I mean. So don't just automatically try to keep going into Antargat if your mind is still busy. Chant out loud, try Antargat. If your mind doesn't settle, try out loud again. And then eventually you'll get an understanding of how long you need to do it. It will be dependent on what's going on in your life, what vichar you've taken on. But generally, you will start to notice, you'll start to feel relaxed, the thoughts will settle. And then why Guru internally, on, like Benji said, on the breath or just chanting in your mind. Hanji, when you did Simran before doing this course, once I think it meant why. When I did Simran before doing this course, once my mind settled, I would consciously think about Vaheguruji's qualities and blessings they've given me. But from the course, I'm learning that we should not be consciously making thoughts. So now I'm a bit confused what I should do. In Gurbani, Guruji says to do Vichara Vaheguruji Amrit Villa. I'm probably confused about what Vichar means. I thought it meant to think about Vaheguru.
Ji. Um, so this was actually something that I struggled with initially as well. This, I think many of us did. I think Amdeep Benji, we must have had a conversation about this as well, which is the transition from thinking about Paramatma, having loving thoughts about Paramatma and about Paramatma's guns, and then transitioning to then actually going into a thoughtless state, and the kind of massive difference that's a huge difference in terms of bhakti. And those feelings and reflecting on Paramatma's guns, which we do when we read the Gurbani as well, is very important. It's very important to do Khoj of Gurbani, to reflect on Gurbani, to read the accounts of the Bhagats and the Gurmukhs, the Guru Sahibah, and their accounts of their experiences of meeting Paramatma. And then there is a transition, though. Then when we read the Gurbani, we do the Khoj, we learn about Paramatma's guns, we learn, what are the fruits of going on this spiritual path. Then the the next step is to do, is to take the step to go into that state that Gurbani is talking about, that is beyond the physical body, beyond the vichar mare, tare tare ult jo na ave. That Gurbani gives us all of the accounts, the experiences, the roadmap. And then at the end of everything says, now you do the Simran. Now you, using this Jukti of Saskira Simran, chant with the tongue, listen with the ears, still that mind, bring it to a single minded focus, ikman ikchit, kill the vichar. And when we do that, when we get used to, get familiar with, explore that practice, and this is where the belief really came for this way of doing the Simran. This is where the doubts started to clear. Was that when you go into those states, when you leave that physical body, when you go into Sun, the feelings that well up inside of you are like nothing you experience in this material realm, no matter how much you think about Paramatma's guns, no matter how much you reflect in terms of analytical mind. And so that's where the doubts get erased, that those feelings that we're trying to instill inside of us through thinking, like wanting to feel love or yearning, when you experience those from beyond the analytical mind, when they come from connection, the feelings are just a whole different other thing. They're the, those feelings that well up then are just completely different to the ones that we try to create with our analytical mind. And that's where the doubts go. That's when we realize that actually we're connecting to those emotions from a deeper place. They're coming from
Yes.
connection with Paramatma, as opposed to just being created by the analytical mind.
And Angie, so Benji always likes to tell stories about me before and after. And I was very analytically minded, very problem solving, coming up with new ideas, even if it was about Vaiguru and I think Gurbani means this and I think Gurbani means that, and amazing ideas. And I feel like there is, like Benji's saying, there is that stage where we do want to contemplate Vaiguruji's gun, their greatness. And we need to go beyond that stage because don't want to just know it. We want to experience it. And then that's where so that will be like the boat that will take us across so far, thinking about Vaheguru, talking about Vaheguru, contemplating Vaheguru. That will give us that motivation, that inspiration that we've been talking about. But I remember reading Mantu Jot Sarup Hai Apna Mool Pachan, that we are the embodiment of Vaheguruji's light. Recognize that. But just by me reading that and thinking about it didn't give me the experience of being that light. However, when you start to do that action, then what Gurbani is telling us to do, Gurbani kya hai, sevak jana manne, par tak guru nistare. Whatever Gurbani says, we as the sevak, as the servant, do that, then par tak guru nistare. Guru becomes manifest, if you like, to you. So it's that experience that then follows on from that. So if we're doing the Simran, but we're still just thinking, oh, Vaheguru, you're amazing, Vaheguru, you're amazing, that's great, but sometimes we can get stuck just in Satogun then. Um, and Satogun's good, if you've got your eyes open, you're better off in Satogun than you are in the other gun. But when we're doing that practice with our eyes closed of the Simran, we want to go even beyond that. We don't want to just talk about it. We want to experience that love. We want to experience that jot that is within us. So that's the difference. So we're not saying you're wrong. We're just saying that's a good stage.
Mm.
And we still, like, I still need that a lot of the time. I have to bring myself back into Satagun. And then I'm thinking about Vaheguru, I'm feeling grateful. And, I'm thinking about, certain shabads in my mind. But then when the Simran starts, I want to let go of everything. I want to let go of even the good thoughts, even the bad thoughts, even the past, even the future. And that only focus in that moment is that sound, is that done. So we can go leave the body, we can leave the identity, we can leave our name. We become no one, no thing, nowhere. And koi nao na jane mera, aap gavaiye. We lose ourselves. And only if we lose ourselves, we lose our own mat, we lose our own vichar, our own thoughts. Only then can we merge Bani Sank Bani like water in water when there's nothing left of us. And then we come back. Maharaj sends us back into this body. And the follow-on question was about how do the Panch Gun, like Sat Santok, Daya, Nimrata, how do they relate to Simran? And should we be trying to consciously bring them into Simran and daily life? So, Hanji, of course, it's good to bring those gun into daily life. But as you're doing that Simran and you're going into Sun, you're no longer trying so hard. And that is a huge difference. You are going into Sun, you're going into Sed, and when you open your eyes, you are naturally calmer. You are naturally more compassionate, more loving, more forgiving, more patient. And I always say, just really quickly, when I was one of the times a lot of times I've struggled, but one of the times I was struggling a lot with my health issues, and I would get really angry at my young children who were young at the time. And every day I would say, I want to be less angry, I want to be more peaceful, I want to be like a good Sikh, Hannah. And just knowing that, knowing Gurbani, reading Gurbani, I knew that more and more, but it didn't change me on the inside. And every day I would try, and every night I would go to bed feeling guilty because I thought I'm trying, but nothing's changing because that would become a habit. We talk about our subconscious mind. Became a habit in my subconscious mind. A certain action would trigger a reaction, a certain thought would trigger an emotion, and it would trigger a reaction. But when the Simran started to happen, Maharaji Kirpanal, then when I'd go into that state of sun and then I'd open my eyes, I was just calmer. And I'm not saying it happened overnight, and I'm not saying I never get angry, but Mara just transforms you as you start to go into those states. And so you're not trying as hard to be that person. You genuinely start to become that person because Maharaj washes those Ogun, washes those kind of negative virtues away. Can we still be conscious, trying to be conscious about bringing those gun? Of course, we should be doing that as well. If you notice you've said you've been angry or you've been judgmental, of course, it's amazing to be conscious of that. But what's much easier is to become conscious of it and know that doing that Simran, killing that thought, is going to help you even more. So we can do it in the 3D, which is the trying hard, repetition, matter and matter, reading books, doing courses. Yes, it works, but it takes time. Hannah, it takes repetition, it takes effort. Whereas when we're doing it according to how Maharaji's told us, we've heard these Sakya of Ganika, of Sajjan Tag, these worst of the worst people who transformed almost overnight. What they did was they went beyond their own identity, beyond themselves. They gave themselves fully to that practice of Simran, of Bhakti, and that transformation started to happen internally for them. So, Benji, is there anything you want to add to that before we finish?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one last thing is that the love that we can cultivate while the mind is in Thregon is a very different kind of love that we can experience when the mind goes beyond Thregon. So when the mind is in Thregon and it tries to love something or somebody, it's not able to do that wholeheartedly. So the mind can love when certain conditions are met. So sometimes we have that kind of love with Paramatma or even with our families that if they do what we want or if we get the things that we want, then we can love. Whereas if we get let down or something gets lost or something doesn't go our way or our expectations aren't met, then we can't feel that love towards that person and towards Paramatma. So the kind of love that is within Trigun that we have for Paramatma is still limited. It's not that unconditional love. But when we go beyond Trigun, when we do what it says in Gurbani, when we get with Guru Sahib's Kripa the understanding and the wisdom of the internal subtle body, the Ira Pingla Sukhmana, all of that is within Gurbani, the Naudar of the body. When we start to gain access to that and learn how to go beyond material to spiritual, then we access a kind of love that is unconditional. That is the same as Paramatma's love. And then we truly know how to love Paramatma and also truly know how to love our family members. Hanji.
Right. Amazing. So we've gone through all the questions that were there, but we're out of time now. So we'll try to make some more space for those questions. Again, as
Hanji.
Benji said earlier, the more we do the practice, those doubts will just start to fade, between the Gurbani and the Simran and the Sangat, those doubts will just fade. It's okay to have them. It's good to ask the questions. But the more time that you're spending in that realm of Simran, of Sun, of Sangat, of Gurbani, you start to realize that actually this is the way, this is the true path, and this can give us that experience that we're looking for of peace, of love, of bliss. So, Inya Bintia Parvan Kanya, forgive us if we made any mistakes. Anything else you want to say, Benji?
Nee.
ਹਾਂਜੀ
Hanji.
ਸੋ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ
Hanji ka
ਖਾਲਸਾ
khasta,
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ
Vaheguru
ਕੀ
Ji ki
ਫਤਿਹ
fateh.